Hello, kids. Papa Duke here. Episode 5 from An Ordinary Occupation. When we left off, the Romans had arrived and interrupted the town festivities. Let's see what happens next. There were 3 soldiers, each on large horses bearing the standard of Rome's 20th Legion, Legio XX, XX meaning 20 in Roman numerals, of course, who pulled up on their reins rudely close to the recently festive table. Among them was Granius, his scarred face showing contempt at the decadent spread of food, who seemed subordinate to a younger procurator who wore a rather ostentatious helmet with colored feathers. The younger identified himself as Quinto Flavio of the Gordiano cohort, Regiment of the Horse. The third was a very large centurion named Licinius, not heavy but long. His boots reached much closer to the ground than did the others, and his helmet, noticed Pock from the inside of his barn, while not festooned with pomp, rode highest among them. Pock had immediately set upon hiding his valuables in the hay and fodder, and 2 of the teenage girls hurried the smallest children into the longhouse when this interruption emerged from the west gate. The rest of the villagers stood defiantly. Licinius, his horse in profile as if to boast its own good form, immediately singled out the tallest of the townsmen, that being young Derg, and locked eyes on him, seeming to command a fight in the grand circus. Even at just 14 years of age, Derg was not one to intimidate easily, and he repaid the gladiator with an icy glare of his own. Phelan approached the front of the crowd as this Quinto Flavio dismounted, his sword and gear rattling and clanking against the horse's metalwork. The chieftain stood in silence and awaited some declaration which he knew would require careful deliberations but a rapid response. The legate unfurled a scroll which he produced from a saddlebag. To all citizens, residents, tribes, serfs, and subjects otherwise of Valentia, he began. He had a voice that squelched in a much higher and disagreeable manner than expected, thought Rita. We be Gaddandy, muttered Y, with downturned mouth to Syl and Fro, who both nodded as they stood a bit taller. By order of Carelius Priscus, Governor Council of the territory of Britannia and the tributary of Valentia, and under the authorities of Imperators Caesar, Marcus Aurelius, Antonius Augustus, and Caesar Licinius Aurelius Verus Augustus. 2 Caesars, thought Rita. Tribute will be submitted or rendered by force of 1 from each herd of cattle, barn of swine, and flock of sheep or goat, the Roman barked. Rita's thoughts were racing as he did not listen to much more. What was this about? Why 2 Caesars? Would there be 2 armies of oppressors he must battle? Must we feed them as well? Rita's mind came back as Quintus said, All must be delivered to the regiment of the horse, the Seveninium at Hunum, on the 7th day from today. No exceptions, he added as he casually tossed the scroll at the feet of Chieftain Phelan, who responded with only a cold look of battle-hardened high commander. Granius slowly dismounted, and then, giving Rita a glance, motioned toward the platters and said, What is this? Celebrating some silly god, are you? Bumping Rita's shoulder with his own, Granius pushed his way to the table. He grabbed at a leg from the buttered goose, fought to free it for a moment, then simply picked up the entire fowl and turned toward Rita. Terrible when someone takes something that belongs to you, is it not? The vulgar man hissed as he licked at his fingers. Person would want revenge, would he not? Particularly if that something were shiny and valuable. Don't you agree? Asked Granius in a challenge, as his eyes were only inches from Rita's unblinking stare. Rita began to understand the old Legionnaire's meaning. Pock's fortunate find had been meant for Granius. A drop of bribe money or contraband prematurely interrupted. But Granius was fishing, Rita thought, or he would have apprehended them on the road. And certainly this accusation did not involve the official business at hand. Granius grabbed a ham and threw it up to Licinius, who caught it with both hands and took a large bite in one fluid motion. The Legionnaires then kicked at their horses and trotted toward the west gate, where Licinius and Granius disappeared through the canopy. Quinto Flavio, being a showman of sports, veered away from the west gate and jumped the small thicket fence erected between the trees at town's edge. Pitiful, thought Rita. Sit, said Phelan once the sound of the Roman horses was gone. All of the women and men of Moor arranged themselves at the feasting table, not as they were, bunched in gossiping groups, but side by side, husband and wife, in a knowing bond of strength and support. Twos were obliged to become fours, and fours 8, as the entirety of the village showed an unspoken cohesiveness and resolve while Phelan spoke. We shall seek counsel with the Otenidae, and they will know the intent of the Dumnonii. Still, take my horse with a message to Brem. Tell them we seek counsel at the waters of Heraskegelin at sunrise, the day after tomorrow, he said, pointing at the carpenter's family. And stay off the roads, ride the old footpath carefully. Do not scratch my horse with thorns, the chieftain added, bringing an amused murmur to the table. They may have been nervous, some even fearful, but their unity gave them a cheerful stride. Will we hasten our plans of revolt? Durg asked his father. Phelan replied to all, we will if it is in the best interest of all tribes. We cannot face the occupiers alone. What of the Briganti? Cadman the forger asked. Pock, you have the contact. Discover their intent, replied the chieftain. Take your card as usual to trade something or other. It matters not what it is. Just move with care under the watch of suspicious eyes. Observe, learn, and meet the council at the Lynn in 2 days. Silently counting on his fingers, eyes skyward, Pock ciphered the hours needed to arrive at Cataractorium, do his diligence at haggling a price, and the journey back to that sacred waterfall where kings of old sued for peace. Pock knew he had no time to waste, and looking at Rita as he left the table, said only, Carpet! Rita knew that his task was to produce and prepare the weapons hidden in the longhouse. There were dozens of swords, spears, and spikes left by Rita's army. Rita had cleaned and maintained their shine over the years, contemplating the day he would join them in valor and splendor, defending Dalreda, parading victorious in Ireland. If only my father were here, he thought. Pock passed through the gate at Salernum after dark, expecting no more than a few sentries and a customs agent. To his surprise, there was a great commotion and movement of troops and auxiliaries moving west overhead along the way atop the wall, and no agents stopped his progress. Once through the arches, which passed under the roadway. Pak rested himself and the mule at water's edge for a time, then proceeded through the Roman supply fort of Corsopitum at daybreak. The same commotion and chaos of men as Pak had witnessed at Salernum was evident there, some driving pack animals up the road to Hunum, some loading barges destined for the sea. Pak took great care to commit detailed notes of all he had observed to memory. Cataractonium was a civitas of permanent residence and great diversity, both citizen and native, and it was the northern seat of the consulship. While there was more activity than usual for the morning markets, business seemed normal to Pak, and he set up his cart on the roadside in his usual spot. The carpet, so elegant in its detail of oriental mystery and import, was thrown bottom up over an old collection of spoons and implements discarded as inferior by the town forger Cadman. Pak was willing to part with these for next to nothing in his deception. But the carpet needed to fetch a high price and bargain fiercely to maintain his cover. Only minutes had passed after Pak displayed the carpet when a group of Roman women of some obvious wealth gathered to inspect. Pak retold the story of the camel's manufacture from the wool of sheep that fly, getting the Moor's embellishments quite twisted, and won laughter and favor from the women. "What price?" one of the younger women asked. "Yesterday I was offered 25 denarius from a woman of great cultural refinement," began Puck with a smile and a gesture to the south. "And she forgot her money pouch, did she?" interrupted the older of the four. Probably the mother of the other three, Puck surmised. "Yes, indeed, but I told her I would offer her a second chance should I not find a more elegant and sophisticated household in the city to offer this fine item, which I have indeed found," said Puck with a subservient bow. "Found a fool, you think?" replied the matron to the delightful giggle of the younger ladies, adding with a laugh, "Cisterius, he should say. You see, kids, Cisterius are smaller coins than denarius." So where were we? "10 is all it is worth," she said forcefully. "But, mother, for the wedding banquet," said one with some urgency in her squeaking voice. "Hush," corrected her mother, to which Pak said, "As a wedding gift, I will let it go for 15. He smiled broadly, enjoying the back and forth of the haggle. As the girls rolled up the rug and the matron counted out the agreed-upon 11 denarius, Pak caught the eye of his contact. The Briganti were a tribe that had succumbed to the Roman forces many years earlier, but not without a fight from the great warrior queen Cardamandu. They now paid tribute, secretly building their forces again to expel the Romans from the north. Pak knew his Briganti contact only as Sybil the fortune-teller. Sybil approached Pak after the women left with their carpet, eyeing the crowd of traders and shoppers, and asked, "What news?" "The Romans have demanded another payment in less than a week, and there is extraordinary movement along the wall," said Pak, not looking directly at the tall, hardened woman. She scratched at the mule's ears and neck as they shared information, thinking of her own war horse saddled at the ready. You will need a cargo for your return journey," Sybil told Pak, noticing the pathetic assortment of metalware in the cart. "Come," she demanded, and Pak led the mule and cart behind her to a vendor of bread wheats.